5 and finished it all the way up through the end of the chapter. So today we will begin in chapter 26 of Proverbs. Only have just a few more chapters left. 31 chapters in the book. So we're getting towards the end. You'll see here in chapter 26, the first 12 verses deals with a popular, subject that Solomon wrote about, and that's relationship with fools. So we begin in verse 1. It says, "As snow in summer and rain in harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool." Kind of interesting how that's worded. Most of the time you don't see snow during the summer months. I am told, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm told that it has snowed every month except July in Reno, Nevada. I've heard that from a couple different places. So sometimes it can happen, but most of the time it's certainly out of place. And that's what Solomon's saying here, is giving honor to a fool is out of place as snow in summer, or as destructive as rain at harvest time, which we know that can be very detrimental. It is inappropriate to bestow honor on a fool because he will soon prove unworthy of it. Any thoughts on that? I think we can all agree with that. Yeah. Verse 2. "Like a flitting sparrow, like a flying swallow, so a curse without cause shall not alight." Now, I believe it's the New American Standard, or maybe the NIV, that says a fluttering sparrow. What Solomon's talking about here is a curse falls only on those who deserve it. The illustration is that just as a sparrow and a swallow seemingly fly about endlessly, they do light or stop sometimes when rest is deserved. Okay? A curse without a cause is a curse uttered against one who does not deserve it. That's what Solomon's writing here. Verse 3. "A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the fool's back." What do these three things have in common? Control, guidance, correction, if you will. A rebel does not want any rules and regulations, so he becomes an undisciplined person who is often victimized by booze and drugs, or his mind is so far out into left field. It's way out there. If he is ever to find purpose in life, he needs to learn what? Self-control. Self-control. Just as the horse is corrected by the whip and the donkey is governed by a bridle, so the rebel or fool needs to be disciplined. I think we can all agree on that. Any thoughts? Okay, verses 4 and 5. "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes." Sometimes that looks like a contradiction, but what Solomon says here is one must be careful in dealing with a fool to be certain he does not do the same. It's useless trying to answer a fool on his own level. I think we can all agree with that. To enter into a dialogue with him, one must do what? Lower himself to his level, to the fool's level, to his silly questions, his worldly reasoning. Now, just as verse 4 warns against stooping to the level of a fool, verse 5 urges us to rebuke the fool so that he might realize his own folly. In other words, deal with him in the manner his folly deserves. Expose him, shame him, and give correction. Because if you don't, as Solomon says, he may think of himself as wise. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Go ahead, Jack. That's right. If you watch jockeys a lot of times, all they got to do is just tap that little whip on the neck. When in school, when I was in school, and also when I taught agriculture, and I was the pig advisor, if you would. My kids raised pigs. We were in the show ring, and you have a cane. And sometimes you see kids just beating that pig, big red marks, and that doesn't do it. You work with that animal so that just as you put the cane out, eyes see it, and will move to the direction you want to. It's really interesting. It was never designed to beat the animal. Any questions? Okay. Verses 6, 7, and 8. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. Like the legs of the lame that hang limp is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like one who binds a stone in a sling is he who gives honor to a fool. I think we can all agree that one who will not heed instruction or correction is unpredictable. We don't know which way he's going to go. He is not loyal or faithful. Solomon says here, do not entrust him with an important mission because he is undependable as the legs of a lame man. He is like a stone that is so firmly fixed in a sling that it cannot be slung so as to reach its mark. In other words, it is useless. It is useless. Any thoughts on that? Okay, let's look at verse 9. Like a thorn that goes into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Solomon says here, give a fool a wise saying. He is likely to twist its meaning or apply it inappropriately. Solomon uses the analogy he is like a drunk man in possession of a sharp thorn, or some translations say a thorn bush, okay, who is in his drunken stupor becomes dangerous, out of control. You don't know what he's going to do. Be careful. Be careful. Verse 10. 10 says, the great God who formed all things gives the fool his hire and the transgressor his wages. I have a footnote here in my Bible about this verse that says ancient and modern translations differ greatly on this verse. For example, the New American Standard Version renders this verse like this. Like an archer who wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool, who hires those who pass by. NIV uses the word archer who wounds at random. Now, when you take a look, my Bible is the New King James, and the Old King James, the original King James, says this. The great God who formed all things gives the fool his hire, and the transgressor his wages. The King James Version says the great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and reward transgressors. I don't know. I searched quite a bit to understand the relationship between the two. The point that the New American Standard Version makes is entrusting matters of importance to a fool or to a stranger passing by is as dangerous as shooting arrows about recklessly. And I think we can all agree. Shoot an arrow in the sky, you're not sure where it's going to go. It's like shooting a bullet in the sky. You don't know where it's going to land. Okay? Now, the point that the New King James Version makes is this. God, who has created all things, certainly has the power to see that fools and transgressors receive what they deserve. And I agree with that. Anybody have any, I really looked and searched this to see if I could find the relationship between the two thoughts. Anybody have an idea of why that might be so? Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. James. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that thought. Yes. Yeah. The word fools we find used in Proverbs sometimes can mean people who are just not, if you will, educated or understand, and then they can use it as somebody who is wicked, rebellious, that type of a fool. And so those who are wicked and rebellious and do not want to know anything about it, yes, we have the obligation to at least introduce it to that individual, but then if we get the response back that we probably will, shake the dust off our feet and move on. But yes, we do need to go out into the world and preach the gospel to everyone. Good thoughts. Any other comments? Daniel. You're not receptive to the idea of being corrected. Yeah. A lot of times people are like that. Wayne. Two translations. Yeah. That makes sense. The commonality between them is the misuse of the, yeah. Right. They don't. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Verse 11. As a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. A fool, as we kind of talked about, repeats his folly because he is unwilling to be taught. One of the greatest traits of a leader is that he is teachable. But a weak person, particularly a rebel who is insecure, will never gather around himself advisors who will tell him what he needs to hear rather than what he wants to hear. I had a general one time when I worked at headquarters of the Marine Corps. asked me a question. And I started to explain to him, and he said, "Whoa, stop. He said, Charles, I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I need you to tell me what I need to hear." I'll never forget that. General Davidson, what a guy. What a guy. And he's the same guy that one time when he said, "How many aircraft are down at the reserve unit in New Orleans?" And also, I'll get right back to you. And he said, "Now stop." He says, "If I ask you what time it is, I don't want you to build me a watch. I just want you to tell me what time it is." So he says, "Don't go down there and make a whole bunch of graphs and charts and stuff. Just call me and tell me the number of aircraft that are down in New Orleans." I'll never forget that either. What a great guy he was. But that's the point here. That's the point, that you need to tell people what they need to hear more than what you think they want to hear. And that deals with honesty. Any other thoughts on that? Okay? Like a dog returning to his vomit, a rebel or a fool never frees himself from his foolishness. He thinks he knows more than his parents or any other person in authority. He refuses to learn. Refuses to learn. Verse 12. Do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. What do you see, or what do you call someone who sees himself as wise in his own eyes? Conceited, braggart, an egotist. Okay, an egotist is excessively conceited or self-absorbed individual or person. Okay? What happens here is his egotism, his conceitfulness, it blinds him to reality. And Solomon says there's more hope for a fool than a conceited person. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. That's good. That's good. You know, someone who is egotistical thinks he knows everything, has all the answers, and cares only about pushing himself to the front. Wayne. Okay? Right. Returns to the mire. Yeah. 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 I saw that when I was going over that, but that's a good point. Good point. Continuing on there in verse 12, it is far better to have a semi-talented person who will give all his heart than to have a multi-talented person who only gives a piece of his heart. You know, people who are in business, I'm told, would rather hire somebody who has the work ethic and the heart and work hard and is devoted. Maybe doesn't know all the ins and outs, but you can teach that person, can't you? You can teach that person, other than somebody who comes in and says, "Oh, yeah, I know how to do this already." You know, I'm probably going to do it wrong. Probably going to do it wrong. Wayne. Those kind of people make your company grow. Yeah, absolutely. You can train somebody to do a job if they're willing to learn and put in the hard work. Mark. Yeah. In the long run, you're going to be sorry you did that. You're going to probably lose, time, maybe even money. Very true. At least a fool who is humble might be willing to change. Might be willing to change. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, let's look at verse 13. Now, 13 through 16, we just got done talking about relationship with fools. Another subject that is near and dear to Solomon's heart is about lazy people or sluggards. And here we have this in verse 13. It says, "The slothful man says, 'There's a lion in the road. A fierce lion is in the streets.'" As we have discussed before, lazy people will make excuses for not working all the time. Here in verse 13, a lion is in his way. Okay. He claims it's dangerous if he goes out. Okay. Can you imagine that the unemployment line would probably be cut in half if removed from it were all the people who are full of excuses for not working? I think we can. I think we can. They have all these excuses for not working, but they usually do anything else they really want to do. Work just happens not to be one of them. Sad. Sad but true. He goes on, and verse 14 is great. "As a door turns on its hinges, so does the slothful turn on his bed." What a vivid picture this is, described here of a lazy person. Solomon says here, he gets no farther from the bed than a door gets from its hinges. And when you open a door, it doesn't get very far away from the hinges. It's right there. He may turn over like a door opens and closes, but he is still in the same place. Solomon goes on to say he is so lazy he doesn't want to even feed himself. Look there in verse 15. "The slothful man buries his hand in the bowl. It wearies him to bring it back to his mouth." That's lazy. That is the picture of laziness. Any thoughts or other comments on that? I think that describes it pretty well when you look at it. Yeah, it's a good diet to lose weight. Verse 16. "The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly." Again, we talked about a sluggard thinks he knows more than anybody. What this proverb tells us is the idle fool sets more value upon his own opinion than that of any number of wise men. In this case, we're talking 7 men who can answer sensibly. Thoughts or comments? Okay, let's look at verse 17. Now, verse 17 through the end of the chapter, verse 28, deals with the relationships with gossips. Verse 17. "He who passes by and meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a dog by the ears." Anybody ever grabbed a dog by the ears? Oh, you're going to get bit. You're going to get bit. And you got to remember, back in those days, a lot of the dogs were not domesticated, but kind of wild. You're going to get bit. Solomon makes a point here: he who always meddling in somebody else's business is as foolish as someone who picks a dog up by his ears. He is sure to get hurt. I like what Burton Kaufman said in his commentary of this verse. He said, "There is no Christian virtue any higher than that of refraining from meddling with other men's quarrels." Isn't that a true statement? Isn't that a true statement? Any other thoughts, comments? Mark. It does. It's one thing when somebody asks you to intervene, to try to work things out. But to stick your nose in other people's business just brings trouble. Just brings trouble. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Ears are very sensitive on dogs. I mean, they like them nice, scratched and rubbed and played with. But you grab them like that and twist them, woo, Katie, bar the door. You're going to get bit. Other comments? Okay. Verse 18 and 19. Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death, is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, hey, I was only joking. I was only joking. These two verses expose the foolishness of deception as a form of entertainment. Think about it for a minute. Solomon says here, the man who deceives his neighbor and then when is caught, tries to pass it off as a joke. Hey, I was only kidding, He says he's like a madman with no concern for the deadly consequences of his actions. Turn with me over to Ephesians chapter 5, please. Ephesians 5 in verse 4, Paul writes here, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, making jokes, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. These are things you want to avoid. These are things you want to avoid. Anybody ever played a practical joke on somebody that went south? Yeah. It's Mark. On-the-job training. Oh boy. Yep. Backfired on him. Yeah. You gotta be careful. Any other stories to share? All right. Verses 20 and 21. Where there is no wood, the fire goes out. And where there is no talebearer, strife ceases. As charcoal is to burning coals and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. What is Solomon talking about here? Malicious gossip is the subject here, without a doubt. Look how Solomon illustrates it. He says, strife is certain to be stirred up when a talebearer is at work. He uses fire to talk about what this is like. One of the things in school when we teach kids safety and stuff, we talk about fires. Okay? To have a fire, you got to have three things. You got to have oxygen. What else you got to have? Fuel, and you got to have heat. Okay? It's called the fire triangle. And the way we put the fire out is we remove one of those things from that fire triangle. Remember in elementary school, I know every one of you do, when the fire marshal came and says, kids, if you ever catch on fire, what should you do? Stop, drop, and roll. We remember it so well. When you do that, you're taking away the oxygen. You're smothering it. When we have these fires out in the parts of the United States and stuff, and they cut in a fire break, and then they light a backfire. Two fires come together and eventually go out. Why? Ran out of fuel. There's nothing else left to burn. Somebody catches fire or something catches fire and you spray water on it, you're taking away the heat. So that's how we put out fires. Solomon says here, where there is no wood, okay, in other words, fuel, the fire goes out. And where there is no talebearer, strife ceases. If you don't gossip, there's no problem. No problem. And that's important. Very important for us. As charcoal is to burning coals and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Any thoughts on that? Daniel? That's exactly right. We hear on the news here most recently about the fires in Australia. What tens of millions of acres have burned? Something like that? And you're thinking upwards to 3 or 4 billion animals have died? I think was the latest figure I heard. Boy, fire's dangerous. So is gossip. So is gossip. 2 questions. Jason, go ahead. And Mark. It may be that some people think, hey, I know something you don't know, and it makes me better off, Yeah. Right. Mark. Right, Mary? You're trying to harm somebody. I think. Yeah. Well, if you have the problem and you ask for help, then no, that's not gossip. But if you ask for help from that person and that person goes, say, hey, did you know about Mary? He's got this, then that's can be looked at as maliciousness. Very, very hurtful. Very hurtful. Jack. Certainly will help. Certainly will help. Now, gossip is so destructive, especially malicious gossip. Other comments? Irene and then Wayne? She had her hand up. Sorry. True. That's a great point. Right. You're absolutely right. It could be true as the day is long. But why repeat it? It's hurtful. It's hurtful. Wayne? Oh, okay. Right. Sure. Jason, then I have a comment. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Do you think your intentions have any role in this as far as, and what I'm getting at is this. Use the example of the elders in the church. One elder is told something about maybe a member. So the elders get together to find out if they've heard something. You know, it's not malicious. Their desire is to help. Right. Right. Okay. There. No, I don't think so. But you can talk about good things. I mean, we want to spread love and unity and togetherness. And, you know, good things that occur in church and happening. Antoinette. Oh, No, no. Right. I think you got to ask yourself, is there any way that this can become hurtful to that individual? I know our time's up. One more comment. Right. That's not gossip. Yeah. Makes good sense. Boy, I thought we might get through, but we didn't. Thank you very much for your kind attention and all the comments.